Chapter 22. Agatha. The Mysteries of a Name. "Here comes the Prude Brigade," Sophie groaned, fresh-faced and glowy in a blue and gold caftan, her giant hoop earrings shimmering in the afternoon sun. "Just because he kissed me doesn't mean I have the faintest clue who he is." "Because really, who needs to know who they're kissing?" Agatha snapped next to her. "Girls, let's focus on what's important." Professor Dovey frowned, her face magnified inside the bubble over the dining table, wobbling from the ship's bumpy course. "The snake is still at large and coming for Camelot. Is it my fault your dear Teddy didn't show up to save us?" Sophie puffed in Agatha's direction. "Is it my fault your king is derelict in his duties? Don't blame me for being swept off my feet by a hero who actually knows how to do his job." "We don't even know who he is. You don't even know his name," Agatha blared. "Does knowing Tedros's name make him any more competent or useful?" "No, it doesn't," Sophie said, inhaling her rose luxuriously. "Say what you want about your lion, but this lion adores me, shows up on time, and smells like a red-blooded man." "Right, because your nose for men is so reliable," Agatha barked. "Keep your voices down," Professor Dovey said. "The last thing we need is word getting out that while the woods is crumbling and a villain is on the loose, a dean of our school is kissing nameless boys." "Less a prude brigade and more a prude police," Sophie murmured. Agatha subtly turned her head towards the galley. With all the new questers rescued onto the Igraine after the 4-point battle, the ship's interior was chock full. Luckily, no one was listening to her and Sophie. Beatrix and Rena were sniffling and writing letters of condolence to Millicent's relatives, while Dot was at the window whispering to Agatha's courier crow, which had Camelot's official ring around its neck. Hester and Annadil were tending to Kiko's burns, Vex's mangled ear, and 10 other injured questers in a makeshift hospital. Bandaged-up Hort was barking at the enchanted pot to make him a sandwich. It made broccoli instead. Nicola was studying Sophie's quest map. That Sophie had let Nicola borrow it at all was proof their friendship had come a long way. And through the bathroom door, Agatha could see Bogdan and Willem poring over a round of tarot cards on the floor. "Agatha's right. It matters who this boy is," said Professor Dovey. "Not just because we need him on our side, but also because we need to know what he wants. I told you. He wants me," said Sophie, still fussing with her rose. "A boy doing good deeds to impress an evil dean," Dovey said. "Good boys love bad girls. Everyone my age knows that," Sophie bit back. If he's so good, then why haven't I seen him before? Dovey hounded. It is a truth universally acknowledged that a boy in possession of a good character must want to come to my school. Yet, despite the fact that I review thousands of applications for prospective Evers each year, I've never seen this lion in my life. And I've had a good look at his face. The dean seemed to move her ball because the field of view turned upside down, veering around Sophie's quarters in the schoolmaster's tower, which the wolves were violently remodelling while Professor Manley supervised. Thankfully, Sophie didn't notice before the crystal ball settled on the Storian's painting of a tan, copper-haired boy kissing Sophie. Dovey turned the crystal ball back on herself. I had the fairies copy the boy's image, and without giving details, I asked all the teachers and students of both schools if they recognized him. No one has ever seen this boy before. Not a single person. Which, given his accomplishments and skills last night, seems rather impossible. There is something familiar in his face, though. Something I can't quite put my finger on. She coughed hard, clutching her chest, upending the ball. As it resettled, Agatha noticed the black ridges under Dovey's eyes had grown deeper, her face seemingly older overnight. Professor, I know you want us to retrieve the rest of the quest teams, said Agatha, but you don't sound well. We can come back to school and help you. Sophie agreed, suddenly alert. That's my quest as dean. No, your quest is to follow my orders. Besides, I'm fine. Though my crystal ball is running out of time for today, so pay attention. Dovey insisted, her voice still shaky. After what's happened with Millicent and Chaddock, I don't want any more students hurt. Find the remaining quest teams immediately. Bring them onto the Igraine and return them to the school for good and evil where they'll be safe. Also, I've spoken to Guinevere. More of the snake's attacks have been foiled by the lion in Mahadeva and Foxwood. With the lion on his tail, the snake will surely storm Camelot and try to take it by force. If Camelot falls to the snake, so will all the kingdoms of the woods. Guinevere is working with good and evil leaders to quickly build an army to defend Camelot from the snake and his mercenaries. Tedros, meanwhile, is riding out with Lancelot to meet the lion tonight and find out who he is. If this lion is indeed a loyal ally, he will be a crucial asset in fighting the snake when he and his army assault the castle. Tedros is riding into the woods, Agatha asked, bolting straighter. The lion is meeting him, Sophie asked, perking up. Where? The two girls overlapped, then glanced at each other, frowning. Sherwood Forest, said Professor Dovey. It's the only safe space near Camelot where the snake can't get to Tedros. Not so safe anymore, said a voice. Agatha, Sophie, and Dovey raised their heads. Dot held up soggy parchment, stamped with the Sheriff of Nottingham's seal. Since Agatha hasn't been using her courier crow, I sent Daddy a note after the 4-point telling him I was safe. He sent back a letter saying those eely, snaky things were spotted around Nottingham last night. They haven't attacked anyone or done anything bad, but they're slipping in and out of people's houses as if they're searching for someone. If the snake's in Nottingham, that's next to Sherwood Forest, where Tedros and the lion are meeting. Sophie blinked at her. You eavesdropped on everything we were saying. Eavesdropped? You were yelling, said Beatrix, looking up. About the lion, said Annadel. And the Kess, said Nicola. And how you don't know his name, said Hort, stone-faced. Thofi Kithith Rafal, Thofi Kithith Tedroth. Now Thofi Kithith Lion with no name, said Kiko. My mother said, kith too many boys and you turn into a snail. Preach, said Hester. Sophie pursed her lips. Dovey suddenly looked worried. Skims in Nottingham. Girls, there were over a dozen good and evil leaders at the Camelot Summit. All of them know Tedros and Lancelot are riding to meet the lion in Sherwood Forest tonight. One of them could be a spy for the snake. If so, the snake might try to attack Tedros in Nottingham before he loses him in the forest. Dovey cast open her quest map, inspecting it. Looks like Tedros is already close to the Nottingham border. A message won't reach him in time. And Merlin hasn't answered any of my letters, so I don't even know where he is. If Tedros is ambushed, it'll fall on Lancelot alone to protect him. She swiveled to the girls. But your crew has the advantage of numbers. It's our only option. You must find him before he meets the lion and warn him he may have been betrayed. We'll set our course to Nottingham at once, said Agatha nervously. We can't let him be attacked, Dovey pressed. We'll save the lion like he saved us, Sophie breathed. She means Tedros, you idiot, Agatha shot back. Right, of course, said Sophie tightly. Get to Nottingham, girls. Quickly, said Dovey, the image of her face starting to fade. Keep Tedros safe, and bring him to Camelot. You must not fail. My crystal ball resets at midnight, so I'll... She vanished mid-sentence like a ghost. Really, that crystal ball is a menace, said Sophie. Agatha whirled towards her. We need to talk. Sophie was already standing. "We'll do a nice catch-up over tea and those vile chocolate cookies you love," she said, hustling away. "But you need to set the ship's course, and Kiko is desperate to speak to me, so it'll have to be another time." Tedros riding into the woods. Tedros meeting the lion. The snake looking for him. Agatha's heart hammered as she hurried onto the deck and gripped the captain's wheel. She had to get to Tedros before the snake did. "Fly to Nottingham," Agatha commanded. The ship rocked backwards, knocking her off her feet. She heard screams from the galley as the Igraine pulled out of the sea, the ivory sails catching the wind and launched straight upwards, like a balloon cut from its string, soaring up, 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 until it levelled off, surrounded by puffy sunlit clouds. The Igraine pivoted west, as if setting its course, and zoomed into the horizon with smooth, comfortable speed. Agatha lumbered off the floor, hearing groans and shouts inside the ship. "You could have warned us," someone hollered. "Good job, Captain," heckled someone else. Agatha ignored them, watching the Igraine plough out of the cloud tunnel and into open sky. She should go and check on her crew. That was the good thing to do. But her nerves were frayed, her body exhausted, and all she could think about was finding her prince. A sense of déjà vu swept over her, because last night she was sure she'd found her prince. When that masked lion freed her, she'd felt so relieved and protected, back in her true love's arms. But it wasn't her true love, and instead she'd watched the boy she thought was hers kiss Sophie. The shock of the lion pulling off his mask and not being Tedros had left her reeling. Yet instead of being thankful to this so-called lion, or comforted that he'd saved them when Tedros hadn't, Agatha wanted nothing to do with him. Why? Why wasn't she happy that Sophie had found a new romance and their team a new ally? Why was her blood boiling as if this boy were a villain instead of a friend? Was it because Sophie was back to her old princessy self, mooning over boys she barely knew? No, that wasn't it. Sophie hadn't sought out this lion like she'd once sought out a prince. This boy had dropped into their story and kissed her out of the blue. Maybe that's what was irritating her, that some boy would kiss her best friend as his reward for a good deed. No, that wasn't it either. Most Everboys claimed to do good for good's sake, but in the end, let's face it, it was usually to get a girl. No, deep down Agatha knew what was really bothering her. It was that Sophie was right. The lion had done Tedros's job, not just last night, but now the lion was heading off the snake in other kingdoms. He'd swooped in like a hero and beat back the enemy, like she'd tried to, only unlike her, he'd actually succeeded. He'd been Tedros's champion better than she'd ever be. What would Tedros think of this boy who so effortlessly did what he hadn't done? What she couldn't do either? What Tedros must be thinking, going to meet him? That it's time he act like a king? The voice inside her retorted. But it's too late. No, it's not, Agatha fired back. He is king, and I'll help him prove it. Once she and Tedros were reunited, everything would be fixed. They'd fight the snake at each other's side, just like they'd once fought Rafal. They'd be a team again, stronger together than apart. And as for this lion, well, he could fight with them too. Because having 3 people in your story always works out well, the voice inside her said. Agatha squashed it. Just get to Tedros, she told herself. Where are we going to land? A voice asked. Nottingham's landlocked. Agatha turned to see Nicola striding purposefully onto the deck, the necklace with Sophie's gold vial dangling off her fingers. We'll figure it out when we get there, said Agatha. Sorry about the takeoff. Everyone okay? Wellham puked again, and we had to put him down for a nap, which he probably needs since he keeps insisting that he can use tarot cards to communicate with the dead. Meanwhile, Bogdan's creepily sidling up to people and asking everyone if they saw the lion's face and whether he's handsome, as if that matters. Think those 2 had a little too much lemonade at lunch. Rest of the crew is fine, though a bunch of them are too injured from their quests to come ashore in Nottingham. We'll have to leave them on the ship. But forget all that, said Nicola, breathless. I found something. She opened the gold vial on the necklace and poured out its contents, forming the magical quest map. See anything different? Nicola asked. Agatha peered at the quest map and its 4th-year figurines spread across the kingdoms. At first, her eyes went to Chaddock and Millicent, both crossed out and dripping with blood. Tedros, meanwhile, was streaking out of Camelot and was only a short distance from Nottingham, the gateway into Sherwood Forest. His name was Red, the way it had been since the first time Agatha had seen the map. The names aboard the Igraine were red too, including Agatha and Sophie, which was no surprise, since the snake was still at large. Agatha's eyes widened. "Hold on," she said. "Why aren't these teams red?" She pointed at Gronk's quest team in Mahadava, Flavia's team in Foxwood. More of the snake's attacks have been foiled by the lion in Mahadava and Foxwood. That's what Dovey had said in the dining room. There was another team turning blue now, before her very eyes. Jacob's group in Pifflepaff Hills, a kingdom west of Mahadava and Foxwood, a kingdom adjacent to Nottingham. "Look closer," said Nicola. Agatha saw it and gasped. A figurine separating from Jacob's quest team headed towards Nottingham. A figurine in a lion mask. But that wasn't all. There was a name beneath it. Rian. His name is Rian, Agatha breathed. That's what you're focused on. His name, said Nicola. Not the fact this lion boy has suddenly appeared on our school's quest map. Agatha goggled at her, understanding. But that means he's a student at the school for good and evil. That means he's a fourth year. If there was a fourth year in your class named Rian, wouldn't you know who he is? Wouldn't everyone on this ship? Nicola asked. Hort and I asked the whole crew. No one's heard that name before. But how else could he be on the quest map if he's not a student at the school? Said Agatha. Well, whoever he is, the Storian recognizes him. Plus, he's fixing students' quests, said Nicola, watching Rian streak away from Jacob's team, which finished turning blue. Are you sure you've never heard the name before? Agatha shook her head, stumped. Rian means nothing to me. Nothing at all. Well, maybe it'll mean something to his new girlfriend, said Nicola. Both of them looked towards the galley, hearing love-drunk humming from a cabin below. Agatha thumped on the door. Pretend to be talking to me, she heard Sophie whisper inside. Maybe she'll go away. But we don't even like each other, Kiko protested. Shh! Just talk. About what? Willem was going to read my tarot cards. He said he could communicate with Tristan from beyond, and then you grabbed me and told me you had to show me something in your room. Tristan, sounds lovely. Tell me about him. Sophie simpered. He's dead. Agatha kicked in the door. Get out, Kiko. She kidnapped me, Kiko peeped, fluttering away. Sophie backed against her bed frame, sheets wrapped protectively around her, the lions rose in her hair. I know you're mad he kissed me, Aggie. Tedros is about to meet this lion, and the snake may be about to kill them both. I'm not mad about kisses. I want answers, said Agatha, occupying the edge of the king-sized bed. She scanned the aggressively masculine chamber with a leopard skin rug, dark wood finishes, and old maritime relics, which now smelled of sweet lavender and was crammed with Sophie's dresses, beauty creams, and a vast array of shoes. It was supposed to be the captain's quarters, but both Agatha and Sophie knew from the moment they saw it that even if Agatha was captain of this ship, it was Sophie who would be staying here. Tell me what he said to you, Agatha ordered. It's private, Sophie snipped. Well, so is my room, so how about I move you in with Hort? You wouldn't dare! Wonder what he sleeps in since you stole his frog pajamas. Sophie threw a pillow at her. It missed. Look, he said he knows about me from our fairy tale and hasn't been able to stop thinking about me, Sophie boasted, tightening her ponytail. He came to protect me. And that's all? Said Agatha. Sophie hesitated. Maybe Beatrix has room in her bed, said Agatha. And they call me the witch, Sophie retorted. He also said he's a humble servant of Camelot come to protect its king and his princess, and that he would fight until his dying breath to make sure the rightful king weds his rightful queen. Happy? Agatha stared at her. He said that? Sophie picked at a loose thread in her caftan. He wants to be Lancelot to Tedros's Arthur. He wants to see you and Teddy married. That's why he really came to save us, okay? Because of you and Teddy. Everything is always about you and Teddy. I'm just the girl he has a crush on at the moment. Sophie balled her knees to her chest. There could be 1,000 other girls like me for all I know, Aggie. 1,000 other roses in 1,000 other kingdoms. One for his every good deed. Agatha could see the anxious pink spots on Sophie's cheeks, the way she was curling into herself like she used to their first year at school, whenever Sophie talked about her future prince. You really like him, don't you? Agatha said, surprised. Sophie sighed. I'm completely happy on my own. I don't need a boy, so don't make it sound like I do. Nor do I believe in love at first sight anymore, or even true love, for that matter. Not after Teddy and Rafal taught me that loving any boy only leads to them disappointing you once you realize they're boring or immature or an axe murderer. But this boy came out of nowhere when I least expected it. And even though he didn't say we'd meet again, I keep thinking about how nice it'd be to have a proper date where he picks me up and I wear my furs and boots and we dine on coq au vin, so I can ask what his father does for a living and what he does when he's not saving people, and why he liked me in our fairy tale when I behaved quite badly most of the time. But she sank into the pillows. I can't really like him. I don't even know his name. Rian, said Agatha. Sophie bolted back up. What? His name is Rian. Agatha drew Sophie's vial from her pocket and deployed the quest map. Sophie followed Agatha's fingertip to the lion-masked figurine riding towards Nottingham. Sophie turned sickly pale. That can't be his name. So you have heard it, said Agatha, eyes flaring. Professor Sader mentioned that name once, Sophie said quickly. Rian was the name of Rafal's twin brother. The schoolmaster's brother. The good one, said Agatha. He's alive, Sophie said. The two girls gaped at each other. Impossible, said Agatha. We saw the good schoolmaster's ghost take over Professor Sada's body our first year. They both were destroyed, Professor Sada and Rian, forever. Unless Rian's ghost came back somehow and took a younger form, said Sophie, like Rafal. But Rian can't come back, just like Rafal can't come back, said Agatha, shaking her head. Not even the strongest magic could do that. So maybe this Rian is the good schoolmaster's son. Dads name their sons after them, don't they? Narcissistic ones, at least. His son. If the good schoolmaster had a son, don't you think we would have known about it before now? Wouldn't he have helped us fight Rafal? Sophie shook her head. So it's just a coincidence? Must be, said Agatha sceptically. Igraine Landing! Nottingham ahead! Nicola's voice echoed above. Hurry! Rian and Tedros are meeting soon. We need to find Tedros, said Agatha, yanking Sophie off the bed. And I need to find out who this Rian is that's going around kissing girls and not writing them the next day. Sophie puffed. After we help Tedros, Agatha growled. The Igraine hit land with an earth-shaking crash. Agatha seized Sophie in her arms, hugging her tight as debris and clothes and shoes showered over them, and the ship tremored until, at last, the room went quiet and still again. They could hear the commands and bootsteps of crew preparing to disembark. Come on, said Agatha, pulling Sophie towards the door. Aggie? Agatha turned. Maybe it'll all work out. You with Teddy, me with Rian, whoever he is. Our own versions of Arthur and Lancelot, with Camelot great again. Sophie breathed hopefully. What if that's our ever after? What if that's our perfect ending? Well, for one thing, Arthur and Lancelot finished with Lance betraying Arthur and Arthur wanting him dead, said Agatha, dragging Sophie behind her. And if there's one thing I know, Sophie, it's that you and I don't get to have perfect endings.